I am Attorney Qiana Manns of Manns Law Offices, PLLC, and I am coming to you live and direct from the Atonement Dispute Resolution Center in Sunnyside, Texas. And we're back again with the awesome panel for you today. I am so excited about this one. I'm telling you, I can't wait to hear from everybody. So I know you're going to be happy with this panel today. And you know that I started this webinar series at the commemoration of my 16th business anniversary, because when you turn 16, you just show out. You know, that's what you do. And so I decided to take it up a notch and started a webinar series that I really only intended to do for a couple of months. But based on the pushing and the support, really, from you all, it has been a wonderful journey. And I have been encouraged to keep this going. And I did come with you all, with my co-host, Brother Athill Muhammad, because I told y'all I dragged him along. He wasn't kicking and screaming. He was just kind of voluntold, you know, that we would be doing this type of thing for this year. And he graciously has been on this journey with me. And so we are so thankful for you all joining us. If it's your first time, we welcome you, and we know that you will be engaged today. And if you are a repeat watcher, you have been with us from the beginning of this ride, we doing it. And so I thank you so much for being a part of the celebration of being in business for 16 years and coming out into the community with these wonderful, excellent professionals. And these series that we have been having have been very timely, and this one is no different. And so this webinar series, the topic is Living Under the Shadow of Death, Police Misconduct and the Criminal Justice System. And this is part 2. Part 1 was so engaging and so fulfilling for our audience, and they wanted to know more. They had so many questions. We couldn't get to all of the questions, and we had a dynamic panel for part 1, and you are not going to be disappointed today. I mean, this panel is so power-packed. But let me bring on my co-host before I get to hallelujah and before they even get started. So Brother Athill Muhammad was born in Brooklyn, New York, and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science in 1985 from Lincoln University. He subsequently went to the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. to do discipline in urban policy from 1988 to 1989. Driven by his West Indian heritage, I have to say that because he did tell me offline that he may throw in the accent today. He does that from time to time. And so driven by his West Indian heritage, he was, you know, motivated, because they're motivated to do bigger and better things. He decided to move to Houston, and he attended Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and he graduated with honors, earning a listing in the Who's Who among American law students 2001 publication. Since licensing, Mr. Muhammad has dedicated his practice to the endeavors of federal employment discrimination, civil rights matters, and representing persons accused of crimes, both federal and state courts, as well as representing clients in proceedings in federal and state agencies. He is a dedicated legal researcher, one of the best I've ever had to work with, and a writer in federal and state and civil and criminal writ and appeals matters, including concerns to the United States Supreme Court, the Texas Supreme Court, and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. He is also a member of the Nation of Islam and FOI, and he is also an Omega man. He may pull out the purple, oh, he gonna get me, the purple pen. So I have to say those things just in case, so you guys are not, you know, surprised, because he do these things, you know, he may pull out the purple pen. And so I want to welcome to everyone and introduce again my co-host, Athill Muhammad.
Thank you, and good afternoon for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. Hopefully I can live up to those standards. And with your permission, Sister Qiana, I know normally you go ahead and introduce our sisters first, but if with your indulgence, I'm going to say a few words about you, you know, Queen Qiana. You know, as she has mentioned already, that She has commemorated this on her anniversary and has just been a stalwart. And so, she's very humble, but I just insisted that we read some of the information, about Sister Qiana. And as we all know, she is an attorney at law and is a child welfare law specialist, mediator, and respected family law practitioner who cares about her clients and her community. And she is most proud to be the mother of 5 beautiful daughters whom she affectionately refers to as the girls. And they continue to inspire her to continue to advocate for families in our judicial system. As a young woman, Qiana attended California State University Northridge, receiving a BA in sociology and criminology. Subsequently, she obtained her Juris Doctorate from Whittier Law School. In 2010, she received a mediator certification by training with the University of Houston's A.A. White Dispute Resolution Center. She was voted as Houston's top lawyer in 2016 and received recognition of excellence by Lawyers of Distinction in 2018. As a lawyer, she is not only committed to demanding change in our legal system, but is also involved in volunteering in the community. Her volunteer efforts consists of organizing and presenting for numerous town hall meetings, know your rights seminars, and legal advice clinics throughout the city. And she is also the founder of Queendom Come Incorporated, which is established for the empowerment of women and girls. That is our tremendous sister, Qiana Manns.
And thank you. I'm one of the founders. We have another founder who is on with us today. So I'm so excited. I have to get to her. But I'm telling them, like, they don't have to do all that. This is my show. Y'all go look me up. No, but when you're 16, you get a little about yourself. But also too, that if you say I have 5 girls, look, I don't have to tell y'all nothing else. I don't have to tell y'all nothing else when you say you have 5 girls. And when you hear about our other panelists, you will know we have women out here doing the work, okay? Attorney Diamond Hayes. She is the managing attorney of law office of Diamond J. Hayes, PLLC. It's a Texas-based female-managed law firm. It was created to serve the community while helping others understand the legal processes and their legal rights in criminal, civil, family, and juvenile law practices. Attorney Diamond J. Hayes and her team are dedicated to helping each client through difficult times while reaching the best outcomes for their case. So I thank you so much for joining us today, Attorney Hayes. And I'm going to introduce my sister. She knows I'm just too excited about her being on today. And let me tell you, she is also one of the founding members of Queendom Come, and she is not only my colleague, she is my friend. So I'm going to dote on her a little bit. Sister Sadiyah Kareem has been a member of the Texas Bar since April of 2002. After graduating from Texas A&M in 1997, she went on to receive her Juris Doctorate from Thurgood Marshall School of Law, Texas Law School. We have a lot of Thurgood Marshall graduates who have joined us during this webinar. We are so thankful. And Sister Sadiyah served as an immigration liaison for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee team in 1998 and served as chief of staff for Councilmember Carol J. Robinson at large, position 5, from 2001 to 2004. Attorney Kareem also worked as a visiting professor for the Barbara Jordan School of Public Policy for Texas Southern University from 2004 to 2006. Teaching undergraduate law-related classes. In 2004, she opened the law office of Sadiyah Kareem and has passionately been working ever since as a criminal defense attorney, specializing in the litigation of misdemeanors and felonies, both on the state and federal level. She is known in her legal community as the godly warrior lawyer. Sister Sadiyah has been a community activist and freedom fighter since the age of 15. Her message on social justice, female empowerment, And the power of her story of telling influenced her childhood, where she grew up in the inner city of Houston, raised by her single parent, foster parent, who dedicated her life towards bringing positive social change to her community. Sister Sadiyah is currently the board president for Action CDC, accepting challenges to improve our neighborhoods Community Development Corporation, co-founder and president of Striving in Society to Achieve Sisterhood, Sisters, and board member of Respect, Inc. after Minister Louis Farrakhan's speech, Save Our Girls, in April 2015. Sister Sadiyah joined forces with 4 other powerful women to help found Queendom Come Incorporated. She is living her life with purpose, on purpose. And I am so happy that she has decided to join us today. Sister Sadiyah is a frequent commentator on Houston's Fox 26, The Isaiah Factor, and the African Diaspora News channel on YouTube, which has over 1 million subscribers speaking on issues pertaining to justice and Black women. Sister Sadiyah is the author of Saving Humanity, a Mothers-to-Be's practical guide on purposeful co-creation of a savior, and Know Your Rights, Surviving Police Stops. Sister Sadiyah is a registered member of the Nation of Islam, Muhammad's Mosque number 45 in Houston, Texas. She is also devoted wife to Brother Kareem and is the proud mother of 7, 4 girls and 3 boys. Like I said, I could have started off with that, okay? So you know what it is. So I'm so happy to have my sisters in the house. And I'm telling you, when I'm talking about some powerhouse women, you're gonna hear from them today. So if you will, give our brothers an opportunity to be introduced to our audience. Brother Athill.
Yes, and I thank you again for that for those wonderful introductions of our queens. But hey, we got some powerful brothers too. One in particular is Brother Warren Fitzgerald Muhammad, who is a 1979 honors graduate of the Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School of Law here in Houston, and he has excelled in the practice areas of personal injury, criminal defense, and business and transactional law since licensing in 1979. He has extensive experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and medical malpractice civil litigation in both federal and state courts involving during trials, writs, temporary restraining orders, and appeals. Attorney Muhammad has practiced in business law, has experience, I beg your pardon, and practice in business law and transactional law throughout his career, advising entrepreneurs on the proper business structures and agreements to meet needs. Attorney Muhammad has represented clients before the Securities and Exchange Commission and engaged with federal authorities and agencies from the Secret Service to the Justice Department with regard to currency issues. A seasoned criminal defense lawyer with over 40 years of experience. In 2012, Mr. Muhammad was appointed by the mayor of the city of Houston to serve as an associate judge on the municipal bench and was reappointed in 2014 for a second term. Since leaving the bench, Attorney Muhammad has returned to private practice with the law office of Warren Fitzgerald Muhammad and continues licensing through the State Bar of Texas and the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas, and he is currently the chairman of the board of directors and CEO of the Acres Homes Chamber of Commerce, Chamber of Business and Economic Development. And we also have a dear friend of mine, Brother Deric Muhammad, whom I have known for a number of years. And Deric has, such vast experience, but one of the main things that he believes that man is given power for one reason, and that is to serve others. Muhammad is a Houston-based activist organizer who addresses issues regarding social justice, Black male development, police brutality, racial inequality, and other critical issues of our time. Deric grew up on the rough and tumble streets of Northeast Houston. He was raised in an environment where drugs, violence, prostitution, police brutality, and other social cancers were prominent. This is important to know because it verifies that Muhammad addresses these issues based on vast knowledge and personal experience. In 2009, he released a critically acclaimed documentary entitled Raising Boys, Tips for Single Moms, that highlighted the plight of single mothers raising sons. In 2013, he released his first book, ASAP, A Street Activist's Perspective. Muhammad hosts the biannual Smarten Up Black Male Summit, which addresses the unique needs of Black males growing up in the inner city. He hosts an annual event, A Day of Encouragement, aimed at uniting and inspiring Black fathers. Muhammad has delivered countless lectures at a host of universities. His voice has been heard on media platforms nationwide, and most importantly, in the highways and byways of the streets of urban America. Wow, that's really something. And you know, we have another brother on the webinar today, affectionately known as Silky Slim. This brother is so powerful yet humble that he insisted that we not bring up all of the things and wonderful accomplishments that he has made. So we're going to respect that, but no, we are in store, as Sister Qiana said, for one powerful, powerful webinar today. I'm going to turn it back over to our host, Sister Qiana.
And we do like to share to our audience, and all of you are gracious and humble and did not want us to read any of that, but we like to share with our audience who it is that we have in our community. Part of my reason also for doing these webinars was to let Black people know that you have Black people who are intelligent, who are able, who are capable, and who are experts. Because we get on CNN and we watch all these programs with these talking heads, and they're not actually on the ground doing the work, nor have the actual practical experience of how to help people and deal with them day to day. So this is a real program, and it was offered to our community as a service, and so that they can know that we have everything. We have absolutely everything that we need. And so I wanted to do that with all of our guests, our panelists, so that our community can know you have people to call, you can reach out, and we're here and we're ready to help. And it was for melanated people. I'm going to keep it real because we need to know the quality of people that we have in our community. And typically we have attorneys, but we have brought in this show. Thankfully, we were able to invite our brothers, Deric Muhammad and brother Silky Slim today. They are definitely on the streets, boots on the ground. And I want to talk about this topic with them as we join them in with the legal community and this topic of living under the shadow of death, police misconduct, and the criminal justice system, because they know it from a different side and we work hand in hand together. But I know everyone is excited today about Juneteenth. And so we are actually, here really celebrating and commemorating Juneteenth because this is what it's about. And we had an opportunity to, have Black judges now who are in Harris County that have been recently voted in. And one of the judges stopped one day on Juneteenth and she said, we're going to stop and reflect and remember those who came before us and, who honored and honor them and their work and their sacrifice for this country and slavery. And me and another attorney who was on our program before, we started clapping and said, we've never had that. In terms of the recognition. But I can tell you, Black people have been celebrating and honoring our ancestors for decades, and we don't need permission to do that, okay? And so I wanted us to, just get out here and really talk about the real issues that we have to solve in our community. And I'm gonna start off with this. And this is an excerpt from the Final Call newspaper from an article written by Michael Z. Muhammad and and J.S. Adams, American policing continues to rage out of control. And it starts off, Anthony Brown Jr., 42, was in his car sitting outside his home in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. When the police came, a hail of gunshots followed. Now he is dead. Lemon Moses, 30, was fatally shot by Newcastle County Police on January 13th in Wilmington, Delaware, when they came upon him reportedly resting in his car outside his mother's home. Again, gunfire followed. Now he is dead. Adolph Grimes III, 22, was sitting in his car waiting for his cousin to arrive outside the home of relatives in New Orleans while celebrating the new year with his family when unmarked police cars approached without markings, sirens, or visible police lights. Over 80 shots were fired. Now he is dead. And so I just wanted to kind of set the tone for our discussion today, because some of those names I've never even heard. Some of our brothers and sisters don't even get the publicity. We never hear about them. We never know about them. And so just wanted to set the tone with our discussion today and talk to you all about what do you think is the significance or the relationship of Juneteenth regarding the topic that we're here to discuss today.
I'll start. Okay, well, I had a smile on my face until you start reading the names and the description of what has occurred to our brothers and sisters. It just breaks my heart every time that we have to read those descriptions. It takes away some of the pleasures of practicing law, to be honest, because this is somebody else's reality. But we have to understand that, I mean, we have to disconnect in some kind of way emotionally to be able to move forward to help these families recover in some type of way, heal and recover.
You know, what I wanted to ask, if you know, Sister Sadiyah, you know, as Sister Hayes just said, we have to disconnect, but how, in your opinion, can we actually do that? And you know, it, as a Black attorney, you know, living in our communities, how can you separate, or do you separate, you know, how can it be separated, you know, that emotion and represent, because it's so real, it's an everyday thing.
So, you know, I take the stance of can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I take the stance of having righteous indignation. It is impossible as a Black attorney, when we know that we represent 2% of all the attorneys in the United States, as Black women, Sister Diamond, Sister Qiana, I believe we're like 0.4% of that. And so when most of our clients are African-American, Black, and although they may be male, most times our interaction is with either the mother, the grandmother, or the girlfriends. Hence, we being mothers ourselves, it is very difficult not to be a passionate advocate. I always think about the story in the Bible of the mother who goes to the judge asking for justice. And most times we know that, you know, when we approach the judges, they already have their mindset. They, you know, they've been on the bench, they've been Republican, so their policy has already been set. They come from this white supremacist educational system. And when they see us, you know, pretty much there's a stereotype or innate racism that has been embedded into their mind. So as the mother in the Bible, it's incumbent upon us to continue to be passionate and keep going and keep going and keep going. I think that's why a lot of the brothers, they choose us because they know how passionate we're going to be. But it is absolutely impossible as a Black woman, especially growing up in the same community of the people that I represent, to disconnect my advocacy in my culture outside of the courtroom. I think, for my clients, it serves them best because I go in there seeing them as a human being, not just seeing them as a check or just a client or defendant, but I go in there and I zealously advocate for them to the point to where I may be a nuisance or put my license on the line for them. But I do believe in what I'm doing and that it is a calling.
And I've read off a lot of names who, like I said, I was not familiar with. And I don't know if you all had the opportunity to go to the exhibit when it was at Emancipation Park. And I shuddered even to kind of walk through it, where it had all of the names that have our brothers and sisters that were a victim of murder. Let's call it what it is. And so it was very emotional. I was traumatized, just to be real about it. And I know that you all, Brother Deric and Brother Silky Slim, are boots on the ground. And you have to deal with not only the hurt and the trauma, but also deal with the real kind of things that we as a community deal with in terms of just our ordinary and daily lives. So what is the relationship between your activism and the legal community? And how do you see that, as being something to move us forward in this process as we talk about this topic, living under the shadow of death?
Derek, you want to go or you want me to go? I think that is important to have the activists on the ground the way that you see a brother Deric or myself to constantly keep pressure on those that are in authority to have these police officers arrested. The law is clearly cut where qualified immunity allowed them to commit such heinous acts and not be held accountable. However, during the trial of Derek Chauvin, you've seen what we have known to be as the blue wall crumble. And you had a police chief that was willing to take the stand. And this is not what we're supposed to stand for. And this is not what we stand for. That was a big moment in history in America. And being there to witness that made me realize, and Brother Deric can he can contest to this, that I actually called him and we talked about the importance of that, to see that happen and to realize that all of the work that we had put in years prior to this happening were not in vain. So to be on the ground and hold those individuals accountable, or to make sure that we're putting enough pressure on them to at least bring it to the media so that America can see what has been taking place in these communities, have been super important from an activist standpoint. And of course, Attorney, there are some things that I have to call you on or call other people that I'm connected to tie into these things, because we have all type of situations that's caught up into one situation. There's several different things that make this situation what it is. I think the most important part about being an activist on the level that we're on is that we get a chance to spend time with these families that have lost these loved ones to police violence. We get a chance to see, even after a large settlement have taken place, how the family is still torn apart. So many people look, and one of the questions was asked with the George Floyd family, well, what are they going to do with all that money? We don't see them asking white folks, what are they going to do with the money that they've been compensated for the loss of a loved one, but they ask that to Black people. And the things that they don't see is how these families are torn apart even after receiving these settlements, that the family doesn't move forward with happiness because they have lost a loved one. And the thing that I say all the time is that we have to all realize that these are individual lives that are being lost at the hands of law enforcement. And it's just like losing a loved one to a natural cause, but we have to make sure that those individuals that took this person's life is held accountable. So when I say to a natural cause, that means that the pain is no different. The person is actually dead, he's deceased, and they won't get him back. So All of those things have to be looked at. It's been quite an experience to be where I'm from and where Deric comes from, the streets, to be working on the side that we're working on right now and witness some of these things. And for the past year, we've been working diligently with the George Floyd family on the legal side with Attorney Crump. So to be inside and understand how it's really working, history is being made. And if it wasn't for the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I don't think me or Deric would be sitting where we are today, because of the upbringing that we had. But those teachings have changed our lives tremendously and put us in places that we never dreamed of being.
If I may, Sister Qiana asked a question earlier about the relationship between Juneteenth and the inordinate amount of police killings that we see in our community, our people being the victims. I think it's just another sign that we are not yet free. And I think the Swahili term that we use when we say not yet free is uhuru. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not yet free, not yet emancipated. When you look at the word emancipation, Minister Farrakhan teaches us, emancipation comes from a Latin term called mancipere, which means to be freed from their hands, but not from their control. And what we as Black people must be after is not emancipation. We have the freedom and independence. Emancipation is something that you accept when you can't take care of yourself. A child can go to a court proceeding and literally be emancipated from his or her parents. The lawyers can bear me witness. It's actually a court proceeding. So we must ask ourselves the question, why did Abraham Lincoln use that language? Why did he call it the Emancipation Proclamation and not the Freedom Proclamation? It was because it was never designed to free you. It was designed to free you from them physically, but never to free you from them mentally. And so we still walk around with the shackles of slavery on us. And when police officers patrol our neighborhoods, they see those invisible shackles. Police officers are taught to control with two mentalities. You have what's called the guardian mentality, and you have the warrior mentality. When they patrol rich white neighborhoods, they patrol it with the guardian mentality. When they patrol poor Black and brown neighborhoods, they patrol that neighborhood with the warrior mentality. Had George Floyd been stopped for the same alleged crime that they say that he committed, had that taken place in a white neighborhood, he would probably still be alive today, because you don't murder human beings in white neighborhoods in front of white children because it just might traumatize me. So there are a number of factors that we have to consider when we think about the way we're viewed by law enforcement and this thing called Juneteenth that we're being taught to celebrate. The second question dealt with the activist relationship with attorneys and lawyers. How do activists deal with lawyers? My answer to that question is very, very carefully. Very, very carefully. Because it depends on what type of lawyer that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a lawyer that is bought and sold, that's not a lawyer that you want to deal with. But if you're dealing with an attorney who has integrity, who's going to use the law as a tool and a weapon to get us as close to justice as they can, then that's a lawyer that is a friend of justice, a friend of the community, and a friend of we as activists. Because there are two types of justices when it comes to police brutality victims and their families. You have criminal justice and you have economic justice. The most important is criminal justice. But equally as important, in my humble opinion, is economic justice, because if a man is murdered by law enforcement and he's no longer here to take care of his family, then that man's family should be compensated in a way that they could at least grieve without having to worry about how many bills they have to pay. So I applaud when I see these families get some measure of economic justice when their loved ones have been murdered by law enforcement, but it still hurts my heart when the cop walks away, goes free, and sometimes he walks away richer than the family who's gotten a settlement from the city or the county or the state. So our relationship with law enforcement is proof that we're not yet free. And how activists should deal with attorneys in the legal system, you have to deal with them very, very carefully. Thank you.
You know, brother, if I may, it's interesting. I'm gonna real quick so we can go on to another point, but it's interesting that Brother Deric said, you know, what he said initially, as far as, you know, would this have happened in an affluent white community? And, you know, I had come across a case that was 2017 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where a police officer actually testified on a matter as far as how they deal with things. And as we know, as Brother Warren knows, and the rest of us know on the panel who are lawyers, we know that, you know, one of the main things that law enforcement does that gets everything is your particular traffic stop. Well, this officer actually testified as one of, or part of the initiatives is to look for a small infraction in hopes of bigger and better things. And so the thought is then that you're looking for a simple traffic infraction, something as simple as not using your turn signal, something as simple as, you know, going 2, 3, 4 miles over the speed limit. That then gets the officers there, and they know fully well that, hey, if you are in an affluent white community, you know, you get the pass. You know, you get the pass whereby, you know, you can go 10, 15 miles over the speed limit, but they're targeting our communities, not necessarily for the infraction, but they're really looking at it as saying for bigger and better things, hoping, and then the escalation begins. And so it is so right on point. And I just wanted to, you know, bring that, you know, I guess what underline that, if you will, as Brother Deric was just saying.
Brother Warren, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Peace, greetings to all. I wanted to attempt to address the first question you raised concerning the relationship between the Juneteenth celebration and these deaths that you mentioned at the hands of police officers. And in looking at the origination of the Juneteenth celebration, we know that the Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863. However, in Texas, they continued to practice slavery, and it was sanctioned by the state government of Texas. So in the South, they found that the news of the freedom and the enforcement of it followed behind the Union Army. And it was in 1865 when General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston and informed the slaves that they were in fact had been emancipated. The point I'm trying to get to is that the state government, the state, Texas, already knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. The slave owners knew about the Emancipation Proclamation, but they were determined to keep their slaves at all costs for as long as they possibly could, which means you had private participation by the slave master in keeping the slave, and you also had state action or state complicity in enforcing slavery rather than emancipation. So it kind of brings us up to modern day and time in which you have private actors and state-sponsored action against our rights. You have government officials and employees in the form of the police officers that conduct these crimes, these murders, with the uniform on, with the badge on, under the color of state law. And then they're protected by the very government that we should be able to seek redress from, which is the federal government, which enforces the qualified immunity doctrine that Brother Silky Slim alluded to. So I just wanted to point out that there's an analogy between modern time and what happened back in 1865 and 1863, because we see the same dynamic still continue.
Absolutely. And so I wanted to celebrate it in this way of making sure that our community is aware of what's really happening and how to get help for what's really happening, because we're dying every day. And I'm telling you, it was at one point, it was something on the news every other week. I want to say, I believe after Chauvin's verdict, that there was like 5 or 6 deaths immediately after from police murders and abuse. And so this is really how you celebrate in terms of getting those people here together that are in our community to really solve our own problems and come with solutions. And it was so such a powerful point when Brother Deric say, how do you deal with attorneys very carefully? Because there is a activism level that certain attorneys have to have as well in their ability, because that's our way, right? In going through the legal system. So I know we were having this conversation before. I may not be out there, you know, on the ground with you all, but in the courtroom, trust and believe we doing our thing. For those who have that mindset and who are connected to their community and the problems in their community and who are advocates. And I believe, Brother Warren, you used the term engineers for social change and social justice. We do the same thing on another level in a different way in the courtroom. So when we're able to connect and to combine the two, we see, like you all have shared with us, a different outcome where you have the chief of police and those in authority coming out and saying, because you have the unity of those who are on the ground and those who have the heart and the minds in the legal community to push forward and to make things happen. And so I wanted to speak on that a little more too, about what do you all see about the positive effect in criminally prosecuting these type of rogue police. And well, I can't even say that. Look, I'm trying to put it nice. I can't even say they rogue, because it just seems like the majority are like that. And so we like to keep it 100 on this show. And we're going to say it like it is. The majority seem to be like that. Not that we're against all police officers, nor disparaging every police officer that we see. But from our experience and from the statistics that we have, it shows that we are the victims in more instances than anybody else. So this has been our experience, that the majority of our encounters do not look good on the other side for us when dealing with police. So I wanted you all to share with us your views on that. The actual prosecution of these types of murderers, these type of police, what does that do? And how do you see the positive effect going forward in this fight that we're in?
Yeah, if I may go real quick, and I'll pass that on to Slim, because I think he can speak with great depth to that. He was there on the ground the entire time during the Deric Chauvin trial. I think he was actually in the courtroom on some days. But real quick, let me touch on that relationship between activists and lawyers once again. Black attorneys play a great role and always have in the fight for justice, for freedom, justice, and equality and liberty for Black people. What I saw this past year during the many protests that took place around the country were Black attorneys out at the protests with shirts saying legal observer, legal observer. So one of the many roles that Black lawyers play in helping the activists to be more effective is teaching us how to protect ourselves from legal attacks by way of the way that we approach the subject matters and the way that we approach our protests and things of that nature. So there is a relationship that I think is getting stronger and has to get even stronger. As far as the police officers who are now being prosecuted for their crimes against Black people, murders against Black people, particularly with Deric Chauvin and others, I think it creates leverage for us because by and large, 99.9% of them still get a paid vacation. But I think it may move the needle within the culture because none of these officers are used to seeing one of their own be prosecuted and put on the stake. Not only was Deric Chauvin he was prostituted too, but prosecuted in the court of law, but he was also prosecuted in the court of public opinion. And there are a lot of police officers who simply do not want to go through what Deric Chauvin has gone through. Now, will that cause them to think twice before they pull the trigger? I don't know. Maybe it has for one or two. But with the way the trend is going in 2021, it doesn't really look like it's made that much of a difference because we're dying just as much this year as we were last year and the year before. So I think that it gives us some leverage, but how we use it determines whether or not it really makes a difference.
You know, and on that point, but as Brother Deric was, as I just want to, allude to, is what Brother Deric was talking about was mapping police violence data showed that in of the over 1,100 police shootings that were recorded in 2020, only 16 cases, now this is nationwide, only 16 cases or about 1.4%. So as Brother Deric just said, about 99.9%. So only about 1.4% resulted in any charges against any offending police officers. And of the officers identified by that by mapping police violence, at least 14 had shot or killed someone in the past. And that just lets me know that this is also a problem with, and why I believe, I practice in this area of police misconduct and civil rights, but that's why I believe also then that part of the problem rests with the law enforcement agencies because they are failing to do sufficient background checks, or if they are doing the background checks, they are looking the other way. And as I'm understanding, that Officer Chauvin had at least 15, and I could be, please correct me if I'm wrong, at least 15 or maybe even 20 complaints. Now, this is where I have said over and over again, and I've said it on our webinars and other shows that I have been interviewed on in practicing in this civil rights in 1983 police misconduct issues, is that we have to do something, because what winds up happening is if there is a complaint against an officer and it is an internal affairs complaint that, or an investigation that is lodged by the IAD of these law enforcement agencies, and if the complaint is non-founded, state law or laws in many of these states say that that police officer's file can be expunged. Now, as some of us who practice and represent people in accused of crimes, we know fully well that a not guilty verdict does not necessarily mean that somebody is innocent. So my point is that if we still have these laws whereby an internal affairs investigation, if it's not founded, and if an officer's file is expunged, then he can, for the most part, continue on in his rogue behavior and is never called to the carpet. So we also have to, in my opinion, sponsor legislation, all these different things, so that if there is an IAD investigation, officers who are investigated, even if it's not founded, their records are not expunged, so that if they commit something else, those persons, attorneys who are representing people in those claims, have at least something that we can look into. Because again, we cannot, again, just having something not founded does not necessarily mean so-and-so, this police officer, whatever the situation is, did not do what he was accused or complained of doing by a private citizen.
I want to add to that, Brother Till. You were partially correct with Derek Chauvin's criminal behavior that he had been allowed to carry out. There was actually 18 different times that people reported him, and I think that that is something that we have to really bring to our people, that we have to make these complaints so that a record can be kept. However, on the 25th of last month, we went to the White House and sat down with President of the United States for the George Floyd Policing Act. That act has a portion inside of it where these police conduct will follow them, and they won't be allowed to be given a job opportunity in other parishes, because what actually happens is that I could mess up in Houston and then go right up the street and get a job in Beaumont. That's going to end. That's one of the things that we're fighting to stay inside of the George Floyd Policing Act. However, the Republicans are pushing back against the qualified immunity, and our people have been real adamant about keeping the qualified immunity inside of the bill. But when you really research this, the qualified immunity only allows the police officer to be sued as well as the department that they're working in, or the state that they're working in. So the qualified immunity, I'm not going to say that it's not a big deal, but it's not a deal breaker as long as we can control these individuals from going being corrupt in other places, is what we're after. And the chokehold has to stop. The no-knock warrants have to stop. These are things that have put our people's life at risk. But there is a major pushback on the qualified immunity, because they're saying that they're not protecting the police officer enough against lawsuits. So we're looking at that. But with the passing of the Juneteenth bill, it has been almost a slap in the face for us as activists and as lawyers and as people that want change, for them not to have passed the George Floyd bill in a timely fashion that we're looking for. There's no police reform bill that's been passed yet. So it's a sour acceptance towards that, because we definitely need this police reform bill to pass in the name of George Floyd. And we want it to be meaningful, not just a bill with his name on it. And another thing I heard the sister speak about, when Chauvin was convicted, there were actually 7 police murders that took place right after that, with Mikael Bryant, Steve Olson, Andrew Brown Jr., 2 San Antonio men that were unnamed at the time, and Pat Govan. All of these individuals, and of course, Devontae White, which was a 19-year-old who was stopped for when you say minor infraction, they stopped him for a air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror, and the cop said that she thought she pulled her taser and actually shot Devontae White. So all of these individuals lost their lives within a 24-hour period, is what we have to say. It was within 24 hours after he convicted. And of course, we know exactly how this is taking place because of this secret society that operates under the disguise of law enforcement. And it's like, you got one of ours, we'll take 10 of yours kind of mentality, And when you see this happening, this is why we have to vigorously fight to get these individuals off the force by any means necessary. I commended the chief of police from Minneapolis for standing up and getting on the stand saying that this is not how we police. But it's also kind of hypocritical for Deric Chauvin to have 18 citations against him and you hadn't fired him. So we could say that this is a new day, and like Brother Deric say, the needle has moved, but only a small amount. This is and I think as Black folks that we're too quick to celebrate. So we're celebrating the conviction of Chauvin, but there's so many that hasn't even been brought to justice, such as the case with Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Pam Turner, which we're doing court with in a few days. So all of these individuals, we want to see justice for all of them, and hopefully we have a DOJ in place now that will start opening up some of these cases, because it's very important to look over some of the cases that wasn't even looked at, was just say, okay, we're not going to mess with that. We want those cases open back up, and I want those cases looking at with a clean eye as well.
Sister Qiana. Yes, I want to bring up another point, and I have somewhat of a difference of opinion concerning I guess the beneficial factor of criminal prosecutions as opposed to the civil litigation. Having been a criminal defense lawyer and a civil litigator, I don't think there's any better forum in which to uncover the truth than in civil litigation. A person can be charged with a crime and just enter a plea, and the facts may never come out. Or they can have a trial and the judge can rule that certain evidence is not admissible and certain things you can't go into. But in civil litigation, there's a full array of discovery tools that allow you to dig down deep and pull up everything that lies underneath the surface through requests for production to force them to produce training manuals, internal memoranda, internal correspondence, emails, depositions. You can call an unlimited number of witnesses to be under oath and depose them with little to no restraint on what you ask them. And this is one of the best forums in which to uncover that which they really want to keep covered. So I think the qualified immunity that protects the police officer from being joined in the litigation is something that really needs to be attacked, because it prevents the civil lawsuit from going forward. And the civil lawsuit is not just about the money, it's about the opportunity for discovery that is so valuable and important, and that can be an aid to getting some of the change that's needed. So I just wanted to point out, the criminal prosecution is well and fine, but we can't minimize the effect of being able to have civil litigation and use all of the tools available to uncover the truth.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is the beauty of having this dialogue in terms of the legal activism and, like you said, engineering of social change, because you can see in civil litigation the treachery. You can get the documents. You can get all of the information and put it, out there for people to see why, this legislation is really needed. Why, these things have to change, and move policy and all kinds of things in terms of uncovering what it is that people try to cover up. And as he was saying, on the criminal side, we're typically on the defense side, right? So we don't want a whole lot of information coming in. And so we know that's kind of part of our tactics too. Most of the time when we're defending somebody, we trying to keep as much information out as we can. And some information is not even allowed or permitted for the jury to know, for anyone to know, that may even be relevant. And so this is definitely an important conversation to have on moving forward and making progress in this area to make a real difference. You had something to share, Sister Sadiyah?
Yes, ma'am. So, our conversation is really today, sounds like it's really geared toward the system that they created for us to protect themselves against us. And, I'm a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he was very certain when he says separation, it's nothing else but separation. We are operating under enemy territory. So we're trying to use the rules that they created in order to protect ourselves, when it was the mindset. We talk about the psychology. If you look at the inception of the police department, it stemmed out of slave patrols. And then it moved into police departments that were still trying to patrol us or protect against us and guard their own property, as Brother Deric talked about earlier. And so, I mean, they created the Black Codes, you know, it's deeply embedded in the Constitution, it's deeply embedded in legislation. Even in the state of Texas, the Texas Rangers was created in order to protect against our indigenous brothers and sisters and take their land from Mexico, that we now call Texas. So we're looking for justice from a system that was never created to give us justice. And so the only real answer is for us to create for ourselves. You know, we can learn their rules, we can learn their strategies, we can learn their tactics in order to try to create some freedom, justice, and equality for ourselves. But until we have our own justice system, until, as Minister Farrakhan talked about, justice or else, what does that look like? Everything that is created in legislation is nothing but symbol and no substance. They're going to give us something that may look, you know, we can placate the Black man, the Black woman, and give us something like Juneteenth, an executive order of new federal holiday. Okay, that's for more advertising and more economics for white corporation. And so the bottom line is we have to create for ourselves. Our unity is more powerful than an atomic bomb. We can create chipping that away at their system. When we look at what happened with the Derek Chauvin, I'm kind of real pessimistic about that situation because it was crisis management. Okay, Derek Chauvin, he was the one who's going to be the sacrificial lamb for the police departments because all eyes was on them during COVID, and it was undisputed about what happened with our dear brother George Floyd. And so he was the sacrificial lamb. What the judge is going to do, that's the real answer, because we know time and time in history that the white man can go into the courtroom, slaughter the Black man, and he can go out with a slap on the wrist. Will that happen again? Only Allah knows what's going to happen again. But I don't believe it for a minute that this is real reform, criminal justice reform, and that what happened with Derek Chauvin, okay, it may have moved the needle just a tad bit. But when you look at what happened afterwards, oh, there was punishment to the Black man because of what happened to their sacrificial lamb. So I'm a pessimist about what's happening. And the only real reality to stop it all from their criminal justice system is to create our own system.
See, and on that too, as to go right along with what Sister Sadiyah was saying about being pessimistic about it, is that we cannot lose sight of the fact, all of us know, he has not been sentenced yet. You know, when the verdict had come down, we were all, well, not, you know, but all of our people, we saw it on CNN, you know, all of the different news outlets, how we're jumping for joy and all of this stuff here. And I was cautioning a number of friends of mine, frat brothers of mine, who all, you know, saying, okay, well, we got a victory. Yeah, we got to a certain point, but he ain't been sentenced yet. So, you know, and that's not in our hands. You know, and of course, as I'm understanding the law up there is that, you know, you have sentencing guidelines, and if it's anything similar to the United States sentencing guidelines, as we know, as we talked about, we were on a show a few days ago talking about judicial discretion, and you know, the PSI, the pre-sentence investigation report, is not a matter of public record, at least in the federal system. Now, again, it may be, you know, a matter up there, but if it is not, we will never get the opportunity to see what is contained in that in that pre-sentence investigation report. But regardless of whatever it is that's contained in there, whether we see it or not, we cannot lose sight of the fact, as Sister Sadiyah was saying or alluding to, look, being pessimistic, because the judge is going to be able, he has that authority and will exercise that authority to sentence him. So that's where the real, you know, stuff comes in. So I'm with you also, Sister Sadiyah, being, you know, cautious is what I would also say on that.
I like what Sister Sadiyah is saying, but I also want us to stay focused on the mere fact that we're getting ready to go to Minneapolis in a couple of days. Well, on the 24th, Deric Chauvin will be sentenced. It's our hopes that he will at least receive a sentence 14 years or more. However, we still have to keep our eyes on the federal charges that's been launched against him, which will run consecutive to his other sentences. And I think that's where the win come in at, because he will have to serve his state sentence first, and then he will begin serving if we get a conviction in the federal court, because they have brought charges and he is indicted in federal court. That's where we're seeing the major victory at. If we can get both of those convictions, which will most likely happen, what we're looking to happen in the federal case would be that he will go ahead and plead to a 25-year sentence or better. That will put him away for life. So that's why we're on the line about if this is going to be a big victory for us or just a mere slap on the wrist type of victory. Those federal charges have far more sting in them in the sentencing part of it than the state charges. But once he's sentenced, they won't run concurrent, is what is so good about it. So next week, we will have that opportunity to see exactly what the judge will give Deric Chauvin in Minneapolis on the 24th. That's when that takes place. So we're preparing to go and sit in on that sentencing right now. And then the next step will be the federal court, which is where we definitely want to get him in the ringer at. So let's keep our eyes on that federal situation, because we feel like that's super important in getting him what will amount to a life sentence at his age.
And you all have moved right into the second portion of this program, where we're going into talking about actually what we were referring to in part one of Living Under the Shadow of Death, when we were talking about the Chauvin trial, and also the influences that social media had, and that the community had, that activism had, and all of that. So where are you all, where are your thoughts in terms of the community involvement to make a difference in this punishment stage? And I want our attorneys too to chime in about what does this entail legally in terms of the punishment stage, and what should the people understand about this particular stage of the trial, and where we are, and how, if any way they can, assist with influencing anything.
So as a criminal defense attorney, you know, I believe Brother Warren, Brother Athill, we both have had clients that went before the judge for sentencing. So Deric Chauvin, he was absolutely, you know, his defense team knew that they had a very low chance of getting a not guilty. So what they did was they sought punishment through the judge, and not 12 jurors. And in that aspect, you know, they look at all of his history, the mitigation data that they may have, all the good that he's done. So he presents a package, the prosecutor presents their own package of all the bad that he's done, extraneous offenses, any complaints that he may have had. But on his side, that's where, you know, his team has to really work hard to create an image and a narrative that this is really a good person. And maybe at that point in time, you know, he lost his mind. We don't know. A lot of times when we're mitigating punishment for our clients, especially in murder cases or very severe crime, aggravated cases, you know, we always bring in an expert witness, whether it's a forensic psychologist or whether it's a neuropsychologist, because it may be some kind of organic issue that may be happening with his brain that may mitigate it. Again, Brother Athill talked about the discretion of the judge as far as punishment. You know, so ultimately, it really comes down to the heart and the mind of the judge and what he sees, which is appropriate. And it's just one person. Now, as the community activists, as the family, what we continue to do is we continue to create our own narrative. We can continue to push out, you know, our own testimony and our own stories, and not allow what's happening with Deric Chauvin to go swept under the rug. So all of these other names that we're talking about, we need to bring them to the forefront as well. I like to say this, as an advocate for women's rights, we're not really even talking about police brutality against women. Of the 20% of those who in police brutality are African-American women, when we represent 13% of the population. And, although our dear beloved Breonna Taylor got publicity, and our dear sister Blaine got some publicity, you're not really hearing about the women who are being killed at the hands of the police. And so that needs to be talked about as well. All the faces need to come to the forefront. All the systems that are creating the prison to pipeline, the school to pipeline type of mentality, the criminal and industrial complex with the private prisons. We need to continue talking about this narrative and how the whole criminal justice system is interconnected to place the Black man and the Black woman in an indentured servant position. So as far as the sentencing goes, it's really up to that judge and what his heart and his mind is going to do. So we just have to pray and put pressure on his mind.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what Sister Sadiyah has stated. And what she has stated, in my humble opinion, is not pessimism, it's realism. I watched the trial, and at some point, I saw the defense not even arguing for a not guilty verdict anymore. They were arguing for sentencing. They knew that Chauvin was cooked. Not only was the evidence too damning, the social and political pressure was too great. There was too much at stake. See, this was a multi-billion-dollar verdict. Listen to what I'm saying. That's $1 billion verdict, because had Deric Chauvin been found not guilty, the cities of America would have gone up in flames to the tunes of billions of dollars, and no low sitting police officer is worth that. So he was a sacrificial lamb. But I'll also say this. What we as a people have to do, Brother Warren, is we have to come to a better agreement about what justice really looks like for us. Because while Deric Chauvin deserves to rot in prison for the rest of his life, that's still not justice. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that justice is the principle of fair deal. You want to give Deric Chauvin a fair deal? They should have, after he was found guilty, made him lay down in the courtroom, in front of the judge, in front of the jury, in front of the spectators, and allowed one of George Floyd's brothers to come and put those some big boys too, put their knee on Deric Chauvin's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And if Deric Chauvin was still alive when one of those boys got up off of his neck, then maybe he wasn't guilty of murder. So it matters what the sentencing is, but then again, it doesn't, because Deric Chauvin's daughter will never see him again. So we have to become clearer about what justice looks to us, and then we have to go after it. But at the end of the day, Deric is cooked. This is not legal. This is political. If they don't get him, this is my opinion, if they don't get him at the state level, they're gonna get him at the federal level. But when we got that not guilty verdict in Minneapolis, and not 8 miles away, a Black man was killed by a police officer who claimed that she thought she had her taser in her hand. While these two things were happening simultaneously, Brother Silky Slim, I said to myself that this was Allah God sending us a message that it does not matter what happens in their courts that may look like something celebratory to us. We are still living under the shadow of death. And so we have to build our own justice system. We have to build our own policing systems where we might police our own community. We have to do all of that, but our reality is that we haven't done that yet. And before we can thrive under the system that we build, we have to survive theirs. And so that being said, I hope and pray that Deric Chauvin rots under the jail. But in truth, he should meet the same fate that George Floyd met, if we really want to talk about justice.
Brother Deric, I just wanted to comment on what you were saying. And actually, it goes back to what Sister Sadiyah was saying when we talk about the heart of the judge. Out of 12 people that was allowed to enter that courtroom for those 19 or 21 days, however many days we walked inside of that courtroom, one of the people that let you know that you wasn't really welcome in that courtroom was the judge. Behind his mask, he would look at you with eyes that would pierce your soul. And going into that courtroom every single day, we knew exactly who were with us and who wasn't. There were incidents where we would go 2 or 3 days to court, and the people at the gate, because they had the courtroom surrounded by a gate, would greet us and, hey man, hope y'all have a good day, good luck. And 1 or 2 days when we would go there, because the other individuals wasn't asking us for IDs, they would be at the gate, where's your ID? We said, we didn't need an ID yesterday. What do that got to do with today? You need an ID today. You go back to your hotel and get it, else you ain't coming in. Those were the individuals that were definitely against us. And we had to go through that for that whole month that we were there. And you could tell exactly the heart of individuals that were for justice and those that were intacted into the system that we're talking about. With Sister Sadiyah say, the criminal justice system, it lets you know that's exactly what it is, a justice system that's being ran by a bunch of damn criminals, and we recognize that. So we have to start that separation. It's good for us to separate from a system like that that's only serving us, is what we see. So it's going to be rough going back to Minneapolis this week. The family is trying to gear up for it, but we don't have our hopes high or set our hopes up on that judge that sat there and that actually let us know that he was not for justice for George Floyd. He was surprised if he does anything that will give Chauvin the conviction and the sentence that he deserves. And that's why we have to pray that the federal government will give him a stiffer sentence, because we know the attitude of the judge that was there. And as you can see, going on throughout that whole trial, that judge was, if you bring this up, I'm gonna give him this trial. If you bring this up, I'm gonna give him this trial. He wanted that to go, in any little small fraction, he would have given a mistrial, because he was definitely not for the Floyd family. We seen that out the gate.
Right, and real quick, he brought up the name of Maxine Waters from the bench. Something that Maxine Waters said in the media. It looked like he was trying to set the stage for a mistrial. And even when the verdict came down, you could look at the scowl on the judge's face and tell that he did not like what the jury gave to him. So another thing, and I'm gonna shut up. Deric Chauvin is an individual, but he was an individual that was produced by an institution. See, we have to find a way to not just punish the individual, find a way to punish the system. If you don't punish the system is just going to produce other Deric Chauvins. And there's a Deric Chauvin in every major city. And so we must remain vigilant when it comes to these matters.
See, and on that note, as what Sister Sadiyah was saying, and Brother Deric and Brother Slim, and I see also our Sister Hayes, shaking her head in agreement, is that we cannot, and I'm always using this quote, I pray to Allah that I use this quote and I never forget it until Allah calls me home. You see, even though this was overturned, we know, this is my quote now, is from this case. It's the mindset of white supremacy. That was stated so eloquently by then Chief Justice Taney in the Dred Scott v. Sanford decision of 1865, where he quoted, "They," referring to blacks, "had for more than a century before been regarded as beings of an inferior order and altogether unfit to associate with the white race, either in social or political relations, and so far inferior that they had no rights which with the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. Now, I say that because we know, as Sister Sadiyah was saying when she was giving us the brief history of the police departments and how they had come about. Well, if you tie that to the thought and the idea and the original intent of the Constitution that existed with respect to us, it had nothing to do with us. We were not included in this. And so again, even when people want to say, well, that was then, this is now, the mindset has not changed. And so we cannot, must not, and I pray to Allah, will not lose sight of that fact again. We have to remind ourselves and be, even as this being Juneteenth, as Brother Warren was saying, heck, why did it take so daggone long for the, for the decision to reach the state of Texas? Well, again, because Negroes had no rights, and we still don't, in my opinion, to a large part today.
And I'd like to just go back to what I believe Brother Deric was saying in terms of we have to really in the role that we have, and I believe in the role as attorneys, and in the role as Brother Deric has, we have to work two directions. Because we do still have to give our people an opportunity to get some type of justice, although it's not what we see that we would desire, but we have to set the stage, so to speak, where we could have a better outcome than what it is that we're receiving right now. But ultimately, until we are free and independent people, no one will respect us. But in the process of getting there, we have to deal with this enemy, with this mindset on so many levels. And we have to take to them all of the strategies, all of the tactics in terms of progress for our people and protection, really, of our people and going forward. And I think that's why Brother Warren was mentioning also the utility of the civil discovery process so that we can have knowledge and information that we can use in the cause for advancement in the legal arena and to be able to set the stage where we can, like I believe the whole world saw because of social media, that this is a devil, that this is a satanic mind, that this is a mind that does not need to be among us. This mindset, when they were able to sit and look for the entire time of a man literally get murdered in front of their eyes. And that information we can discover in the civil process to get to the mindset of how these individuals operate and the things that they put in place to trap us. As you were saying earlier, with the pretext, with the stops, how do they use those? How do they organize in themselves? What meetings do they have to talk about this and how they come to our community and police our community? It's somewhere, and we can discover it, and we can get it in trying to go forward and move forward for the advancement of our people. And at this point, it's to save lives. It's not even anymore to get a legislation passed. At this point, we are dying. So we are in the process of fighting on two fronts to be able to save lives and save our people. And I wanted the people to hear basically what it is that they are preparing themselves for in terms of the sentencing phase because people are interested. They were very much invested in the, the trial. They were sitting, looking, tuning in. Everyone has been affected, I believe, all over the world by this trial. And so I wanted them to get a real reality of how this is going to go forward and how this operates. And Brother Silky Slim, when you said like the things that you all had to endure, just to think about the family having to even go through that, just to sit at a trial, about the murder of their loved one. I mean, I can't even imagine. And those types of witnesses should be available and should testify in the sentencing. But again, it's discretionary based on the judge. And you got a view of his mindset. We all did, during the trial. When we say discretionary, we really are saying subjective. It's based on how I feel, what I think, my orientation of mind, right? And so I wanted to talk more about, to let the people know in this stage, because really on the other side, with all of us in this work as attorneys, would be advocating for our client at this stage. And you all do more criminal work than I do in terms of the legal advocacy in that stage. But why do you prefer, when you make that decision as attorneys, to go to the judge in this stage instead of allowing the jury to make that decision?
Well, that's easy, because it's easier to get one person to side with you as opposed to get 12 different people. If you've been practicing a while and you know strategy and tactics, and you know that the judge's record when it comes to sentencing, you look at his past records for certain type of crimes in the past. If you have prior criminal history, if there's any history of your defendant or your client, then you can, really kind of take a educated guess at what the judge would do. Sometimes he'd tell you what he's going to do, right? Especially if your client, your client is absolutely guilty. In this instance, as a defense attorney, I can say that they did right. The defense did what they were supposed to do if they knew the mindset of the judge, and going in knowing what his background looks like. When I have situations where it's an egregious crime, mental health is always at the forefront of everything. Don't think, not for a minute, I think they already alluded to the mental health of police officers and how they have a life expectancy less than the average person, because they're police officers and what the PTSD that they encounter. So we're going to see that come to the forefront. Any psychological evaluations that the judge may even consider. But to go to the judge, especially if they knew what the judge's mindset and they can feel it, and know this, those particular attorneys, they've been in and out of those courtrooms, right? So they know what the judge is going to do. They've had many, many clients probably before that judge. And although this is a big public crisis management narrative that they're trying to sell to American public, they know what the judge is going to do. I've been in the middle of a civil case, Brother Warren, in a very, very racist town, racist judge. And when you're sitting there, you have to be in it to know it. So, but look, I believe in God. I'm sorry. I don't take my spirituality out of the courtroom, because God is orchestrating all of this, and he's going to have the last say whether whether we get the 14 years, Brother Silky, or not, or whether the state judge is going to allow the federal government to give the appropriate sentence to Chauvin. So they did the right thing by going to the judge if they knew the judge's heart and mindset.
Yeah, Sister Qiana, to answer your question about what should the community's position be as it relates to punishment, I believe that the same amount of community and public pressure that was put on the state of Minneapolis to get the verdict, even more should be put on the state and be put on the establishment as it relates to the punishment, because to get a guilty verdict, but to get a menial punishment it goes for naught. So Black people, we have to be as interested in the punishment as we were in the process. I think there needs to be just as much or more pressure on the public, on America, when it comes to the punishment stage as it was on the actual case.
Go ahead, Brother Warren, you were on mute. You're still on mute, Brother Warren.
Yes, concerning the sentencing, I would not be surprised if the judge hit Chauvin with the maximum sentence or close to the maximum sentence, because as has already been discussed, this is a crisis management case. When I saw the prosecutor go after Chauvin with the zeal that he did, dotting all of his I's, crossing all of his T's, I was of the opinion that they were going to get him and make an example of him. And honestly, the example they're making is, if you're stupid enough to put your knee on a man's neck for 9 minutes while you looking at someone videotaping you, and they can send it viral around the world, your behind needs to be found guilty and go to jail. See, that's not going to have an effect on the next officer, who will be a little wise and just take him around the corner where it's not a bunch of people and do what they want to do. But I do, if I may, I do want to go back to that qualified immunity and the civil litigation. Deric Chauvin, by right, did not have to testify. And none of us as criminal defense lawyers would have allowed him to testify. But imagine if he could have been brought into a room and put before a court reporter and examined and cross-examined for 9 or 10 hours under intense questioning. Imagine what kind of information could have come up. Where did he learn to use a knee on the neck like that? Did the department train him like that? Did they send him to Israel so he can get trained there like that? You see, so it's the fact that you can use these discovery tools and get all of this type of information that would never come up in a criminal trial. So I want to say to my activist brothers, don't let anyone tell you that the qualified immunity is not a big deal. It is the big deal. Because when you can bring both the officer and the city of Houston, Brother Athill and I litigated against the city of Houston and the fire department. We have all of their manuals, their training manuals, their emails, their correspondence. We've got all of it because they had to produce it. So the qualified immunity is, and to be, just to clear it, if I may, qualified immunity is a judicially created doctrine that shields government officials from being held personally liable for constitutional violations, like the right to be free from excessive police force. And the standard in the Harlow versus Fitzgerald, the court established that the plaintiff could overcome qualified immunity by only by showing the defendant's conduct violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights, which a reasonable person would have known. The George Floyd murder may have been the perfect case to go into civil court and ultimately end up before the Supreme Court to have the qualified immunity struck down or modified because of the peculiar fact situation. So I think to settle that case without the benefit of civil litigation, really, it may have benefited the family financially, but for the cause of justice, I think it's a tactic that should have been reconsidered.
You know, I wanted to ask to extrapolate on something that Brother Warren just said and really pose this to Brother Deric and Brother Slim. As we talk, as Brother Warren was saying that he thinks that the judge, and I'm not trying to misquote, but that the judge, he would not be surprised, I beg your pardon, that the judge may, sentence him at the maximum or the high end because of the, stupidity, for lack of a better term, that Chauvin may have exhibited. That being said, we're talking about this case, potentially being, a blueprint. But do we, and again, to Brother Deric and Brother Slim, is there any concern that we may have that this could be a blueprint for law enforcement in the sense that they could potentially revamp their use of force and training manuals to make sure that, that they put other safeguards in there, or that other training behind the scenes. This is what not to do, because we saw that our blue brother was indicted and convicted. So this is how you get around it. Is there any concern that, that behind the scenes training may, with these various law enforcement agencies come and say, well, hey, this is what happened, but this is now what we need to watch out for, so that we do not fall victim to the same Chauvin thing while doing what it is that we want to do? Is there any concern that that you all may have as activists, as Sister Qiana said, with boots on the ground?
Of course, that's always a concern, and I think Brother Warren already answered that question when he said that I'll take them behind the building and do it instead of where all these people can film me. There's always that concern. This is not something new. This is news that we're dealing with, but it's not new that they have been doing this to us forever. So this is not going to stop, I don't think, with any legislation that will pass. It would just be a tool that will hold them accountable when they are caught. I mean, even when you look at the body cam footage, or you look at footage that normal people take of police committing these acts, we see the injustices in it off top. They the one that have to wait 1 or 2 years to investigate the footage that they have and chop it up in different angles, and then come back with a narrative that they could be pleased with. We always see the injustices of what's taking place with us. It's the eyes of the individual that's looking at the footage that has a different heart, that, oh no, this was not excessive. He was still resisting. So we're not confident that this is going to change the whole policing force. No. We have to still be concerned with all of these things. The main thing that we have to be concerned with is that we take it to them at all levels. And that's what we've been trying to do. And we have to educate our people. Me and Brother Deric, we talk all the time about the lack of knowledge that our people have. Our people actually believe that a civil rights attorney has the power to prosecute. Well, he didn't take those police officers to trial either. He can't take them to trial. His job is to secure the bag. That's a civil rights attorney's job. Secure the bag. It's the prosecutor's job to prosecute these police officers. So we have to educate our people on so many levels, and unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And that's one of the things that Brother Deric and I diligently take serious, talking to the individuals that we have the power to talk to let them know the civil rights attorney only has one role that he can play, and that's to go after this. The prosecutor have to go after the rest. Now, there are some civil rights attorneys, because I deal with a few of them, that to keep the ball rolling, they'll make you believe we're going to hold them accountable. And he can only do that through the activists and the activism that's on the ground to make sure that our voice is heard. And then at some points, take for instance with Eric Garner, I don't care how much activism was on the ground, they still refuse to charge that police officer. So, it's the same old struggle here in America. The only thing that we can say is that technology has played a major role in getting us to where we are right now. And we're not that far from where we were yesterday. Believe that. That's what I will say. And that's the way that I see it from the struggle that we're in. We have come a little ways, but we have not come to where we need to be when everything is equal. No, indeed, we haven't seen that yet. So it's a continuation of the struggle.
And thank you so much for that. That's why this type of program and having you on here as panelists is so important, because we do have to educate our people. So I'm so grateful for all of you who have joined us today with the practical application of what really happens. We're describing the sentencing stage, with describing, everything that you're referring to as far as the reality of it, how it really works, and not what we assume happens in our mind, because we do as a people have to become more educated in this area in pursuing justice, and also in the ability to be able to really get some real substantive change. And so I am so happy that you said that, because this program is really open to do that, to educate and bring those who have that knowledge, who really work in those areas, to be able to tell you what it really is. We had someone, viewer on the first part, because this is our second webinar with Living Under the Shadow of Death, kind of upset and angry about a lawyer not being able to do this and why they didn't do that and all of that. And that's like, that's not his role. That's not his role. He wasn't a prosecutor on the case. He had no authority or no power to do that. So that was a great point you made, and I want to hear from you, Brother Deric, and from you, Sister Sadiyah. I saw that you all were ready to speak.
I just wanted to talk about qualified immunity and all of the other factors that go in trying the case. So qualified immunity, again, Brother Warren talked about, it's a judicial doctrine. The Supreme Court is the one who created this particular doctrine to shield police officers or law enforcement in particular. So they gave them a shield, like pretextual stops, you know. So again, we're dealing with a mindset of an institution that was created in order to protect the police officers or the law enforcement. So are we really going to get justice? That's why we're looking at the legislator or the Senate right now. They're fighting that qualified immunity. They're giving us symbol, but they're not going to give us substance, right? So that contradicts them and their monster of a creation. The other thing is, when you look at these families who deal with police brutality or deal with the civil side of this, and even the criminal side of this, it's mentally and it's emotionally taxing on these families. And so they would rather settle a case and be done with it because of the psychological effect that it has on all of them. So as attorneys, we may say, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to go all the way to the end. Right. But financially, it may not be feasible because it's a long, protracted war, and no long, protracted war is beneficial to any side. To the psychological aspect or the psychological effect that it takes on the family members who've been left behind to deal with this every day. They got to relive this trauma over and over and over again. So they want closure. So us on the outside, we make, I believe Sandra Bland's mama, they settled for $1 million. We look at all of these big cases, they settle for, peanuts. And we wonder, why did the family sell out? A lot of times it's not about selling out, but it's about being done, having closure, and then leaving it in the hands of God when they are totally exhausted from this particular civil battle. And on the other side, those who are fighting it, they know exactly how to drag this out using psychological warfare. So it's, it's balancing of the two sides. But, Brother Silky, Brother Deric, it's people like you, our community activists, lawyers, because that's what we really are. Sister Diamond, people like you who go out there and we use our voice. We agitate the system. We speak truth to power. We, open up the minds of the people and open up their eyes. So we have to continue doing what we're doing and be that influence and keep the narrative going and not shut up for nobody, but keep speaking the truth to all of this. But we cannot fault the family members who decide to throw in the towel because they know that it's going to be a long, bloody, exhausted, protracted war, and they may not have the mental and emotional or financial ability to continue that fight.
Yes, very well said, Sister Sadia. Brother Warren made a sterling point when he talked about how police departments will basically, I think Brother Athill spoke to this too, they're basically going to revamp not what they do, but how they do things. Deric Chauvin is not being punished for what he did. He's being punished and prosecuted for how he did it. And we have to understand that we're dealing with masters of deception here. So our people need not be deceived. Even if Deric Chauvin is punished to the max, there's still no cause for celebration because he was just collateral damage. See, summer 2020 was a nightmare for corporate America, for political America, for educational America, for law enforcement in America. And they will literally sacrifice anything and anybody to not have a repeat of what happened in summer 2020. This is one of the reasons that they gave you a quote unquote holiday, because they figured they could keep you, playing the banjo and tap dancing and whatnot, then maybe we won't start burning down cities again. So we can look forward to more of the same. And I'm going to tell you why. There's a difference between knowing your rights and knowing your enemy. If you know your rights, but you don't know your enemy will show you just how much your rights really mean as a Black person here in America. So we have to know our rights and we have to know our enemy. And as long as we deal with the enemy wisely, then we can come out from underneath the shadow of death so that we might build our own and obtain freedom and independence, not emancipation. But these people are not going to change. They're not going to change what they do, but they will have to change how they do. And my very last point is this. Police departments in America have one primary job. It is not to serve and protect. Their job is to make sure that what happens in Black and brown poor neighborhoods does not spill over into white and wealthy neighborhoods. That is their job. And as long as you have a wealth gap that separates the wealthy neighborhoods from poor neighborhoods, you will always have this aggressive behavior against Black, brown, and poor people. A year from now, we'll be right here again. So we're dealing with masters of deception. And even if Chauvin gets, again, the maximum punishment, we must not be under the illusion that we have somehow made it and that this is going to stop. We are at war. And at war, if you know yourself and know your enemy, you will be the victor in 1,000 battles.
And we're coming to the last couple of minutes of the program today, but it has been so exciting to hear from all of you. And we have viewers who have hung in there, who are asking questions, and we have not really gotten to any of the questions, but I'm going to take one question from Facebook before we close out so I don't have anybody upset with me. And we are asked by one of the viewers, in terms of fighting these bigger cases, because now we're seeing that a lot of cases are coming to the forefront, getting media attention and all of that. What actions should we be taking to strengthen our own communities?
Well, one thing, and I think Brother Deric and Brother Slim can, address that also. But, one thing that, I would encourage, is that we continue to make these complaints, because you need to establish a record, continue to make the complaints. And the thing is too, and this is a little bit offshoot, but as Brother Deric, as we read his bio in the beginning, we have to also know that even though we're dealing with police brutality in the community, we don't lose sight of the fact that we have our own issues in the Black community as well. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the thing that led up to the Million Man March was the things that we were doing to ourselves in our community. And so Minister began the lecture series, Stop the Violence, which then, gave rise to the men-only meetings, which then gave rise to and was the impetus for the historic Million Man March. And so we don't lose sight and focus of that. We have to, as Sister, to answer the question, we have to police our own communities, love ourselves. But and I'll let Brother Deric and Brother Slim, respond to this as well. But there's one thing I also wanted to mention, we also, so that we don't lose sight, and we never have, when we listen to the media and sometimes they talk about, that, okay, we're focusing attention, white media that is talking about this, we're focusing attention on, all of these, the police officers, but nobody says anything about, what's going on in the Black community. I hear all of these white, reports coming out, or, these white reporters coming out talking about, making it seem as though, y'all are saying about Black Lives Matter, and, but the statistics show that we're taking each other's lives. And I'm thinking, okay, well, people, don't fall victim, our people that is, don't fall victim to thinking again that white people must dictate what it is and what causes we need to go. And I always make this analogy. We have thousands of causes in this country. There's, cancer causes, breast cancer awareness, these different things. Child neglect, So now if I decide to give my money, let's say, or to support breast cancer awareness, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm against, child neglect. But the thing is that, so we have to also, know that we cannot allow white people to dictate what it is and what causes, that we subscribe and adhere to. We're never going to say, and the Honorable Minister Laws Farrakhan, as we said, has already and constantly, as Brother Deric and Brother Slim know, and Brother Warren and those of us who are on this panel know fully well that, yes, we have issues in the Black community, and we need also to address those as well. But let us make sure that when we address these things, that we cover all spectrum. Not everybody can, we have to remember that we cannot be in every fight. But just because we're not in every fight does not mean that we're not in any fights at all. So protect our own community, because we're the best people who can do that.
Definitely. I wanted to add to that because it is super important, as brother said, that we look at what's going on in our community. Black Lives Matter has become a major hashtag, but hasn't become a way of life for us. And if Black Lives Matter, when the police kill us, it has to matter when we kill ourselves as well. I tell individuals all the time, not only must we be willing to scream Black Lives Matter in front of the White House, we have to do it in front of the crack house, the abortion house, and every other house that's taking Black lives away from us. So we have to be serious when we think about that. A lot of people don't like to talk about our problems on the same platform, but us, with what we're dealing with the killing of ourselves. I just come back from a funeral of a 1-year-old baby who was out playing by the pool, and a 16-year-old opened fire and killed 2 individuals, and then one of the bullets struck the baby that was in the pool and left the baby floating in the pool. We have to look at these acts of violence and start cleaning up our community on that hand. And one of the things that I said while I was attending the funeral services is everywhere I go and with all that I do, the number one question that I'm hearing from many people is, what is the problem with the youth? And my answer has been for the past 7 years or 8 years or 18 years, the same. It's the first 3 letters of the word that is the real problem. What is wrong with you if you let your children be out in a manner that's not benefit for our community? What is wrong with you if you could go to the club but you can't raise your children? What is wrong with you? That's what we have to start asking ourselves, brother. What is wrong with us if we're not trying to make these changes? And like my brother say, we can't be in all fights, but damn it, we got to at least be in a fight to see change. And if you're fighting over there, we're fighting over here, and we're all fighting something to change the community. We'll all meet up in the middle and say, boy, that was a hell of a fight, but it was worth fighting. And until we see that type of push, we won't see the change that we want. So we just have to do something in our community. I was on the television show with Bishop T.D. Jakes. And, you know, I really admire Bishop Jakes. I like him as a minister. I like what he has to say, but he asked me a crazy question. He is, Silky, I'm not from the streets, so I really don't understand it. What is it that I can do? And you could go back and look at the episode. I say, Bishop, I'm gonna be truthful with you. Anything that you do is better than what you have been doing, which is nothing. So we all have to do something. And if we all commit to doing something, we can make this a better place for our next generation. That's what's important to me.
Yeah, in answer to the question of the individual that asked, what can we do to strengthen our community? First and foremost, as Silky Slim already stated, doing is not an option. You start with the fact that doing nothing is not an option, but 3 practical things that can be done. Number 1, if there are 2 or 3 or 4 conscious brothers who want to see their community a better place, they can come together and create a daily patrol of their community. The more we limit police encounters and police interaction, the least likely there will be a fatality on our hands as a result of a police encounter between one of our young brothers and sisters and a law enforcement officer. The less we have to call the police, the more we will be able to focus on other things other than loss of life at the hands of law enforcement. So we have to patrol our own communities, especially us as men. There is no way around that. That's number 1. Number 2, you have to consciously and intentionally and patriotically spend Black dollars in your own community. The more we strengthen the businesses in our community, the more we strengthen the economy in our community, the more we will be respected by other communities, and we can create our young people so that they don't have to resort to criminal behavior in order to feed themselves and their families. And number 3, this is very practical, but it's very important. We must organize cleanups in our community. A filthy, dirty, garbage-ridden community will never be respected by any other community, number 1. And number 2, the cleaner our community is, what we do is we begin to change the mindset of the people in our community, because environment it dictates everything. They say environment trumps heredity. So you can give birth to a God, but if you're trying to raise that God in a dirty environment, then the God becomes a lesser God. So three things: patrol our own neighborhoods, spend our dollars in our own neighborhoods, and clean up our own neighborhoods. Those are 3 quick ways that we can participate in strengthening our community.
Wow, such practical, real information that you've given us and our listeners, and you got a whole lot to answer that question in terms of that response. And we are at the end of our time. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. It was such a dialogue that needed to happen, because this fight, as we said, doesn't look like it's going away. It's going to continue, and we need each other. We need each other to be able to see some real substantive changes. And so I wanted to have our brothers come on to join the legal panel so that we can have a discussion, and so that our people can hear that we have frontliners who are working together in the cause of justice. And I want you all to give your information, please, so that the people can know how to reach you and how to get help if they have been, or they know someone who have been a victim of police misconduct or abuse, to get guidance on where to start, what to do, where to go. And also if they need some legal help or advice, how to find you. So please, if you all will, give us your contact information and how the people can be able to get and retain your services. Attorney Diamond Hayes, could you provide us your information?
Sure, thank you. I'm Attorney Diamond Hayes with the Law Office of Diamond J. Hayes, PLLC. My telephone number is 832-308-0909.
Thank you. Attorney Sadia, Kareem?
Yes, ma'am. Let me say thank you, Sister Qiana, Brother Athill, for this awesome platform that you provided for the community. I mean, just having this dialogue is so important. Also wanted to say, there's an extensive list, Message to the Black Man. Can y'all see that? Page 180, 181 on how to keep our neighborhoods a decent place. Also, Minister Farrakhan during the Million Family March have created a national agenda for us. So we really don't have to recreate the wheel. It's all there for us. Now I can be reached, Sadia Evangelista, Kareem. My telephone number is 832-623-2323, 832-623-2323.
Attorney Warren, our senior attorney on the panel.
Yes, thank you again, Sister Qiana, for inviting me to your panel. I enjoyed it as always. And I just want to briefly dovetail right on what Brother Deric was saying about community. The only thing I would add is that we have to start to build our community. As Dr. Claude Anderson says in Powernomics, most of our communities really are not communities, they're residential neighborhoods. We got to make them into communities and then protect them. 800-397-7760, Warren at WFMLawFirm.com.
Thank you. And to my co-host, let's get your information to the people.
Our direct line, family, is 713-807-8167. And our general office number where you can reach me and Sister Qiana, and the phone is always answered by our wonderful, wonderful and dear sister, Sister Patricia Muhammad. That number is 713-459-6404. And you can, if you wish, to go to my website, which is www.yoursearch4justice.com. So that'd be yoursearchforjustice.com. What a wonderful discussion we've had today. Praise be to Allah.
It has been, and this was to me the best way to commemorate Juneteenth. And I'm going to end with Psalms 23:4, which was the title of this webinar. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And then it says in 5, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And so sometimes we're in this fight and God is just preparing the table. So I want to encourage all of you to stay on because the table is being prepared. Continue to stay in the fight and do everything that you're doing. We appreciate you. Our people appreciate you. Your ancestors appreciate you for the work that you do. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And with all of our viewers, we have had the best Juneteenth in a while that I've experienced with these beautiful panelists today. And we'll see you at the same time on the 3rd Saturday of next month. Thank you all for joining us.